There we go. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is David Globerman, and I am the coordinator supporting CAST with PAL Ottawa. I'd like to welcome you all today. This is the today's presentation is the continuation of the spring into summer series, which began in May and will continue until the end of June. And for those of you that have had the opportunity, and I hope that you have had the opportunity to look at the palottawa.org website, we have a whole range of different presentations, sessions that we've had and we will continue to have for this whole month. Some of them are artistic presentations, artistic sessions, and some of them are more educational sessions, such as the one that Peggy Edwards will be doing today. But we've already had, other sessions on nutrition, on medication management, things like that. So really, we've had a really great, we have a really wonderful venue and diversity of topics. So I would encourage you to continue attending these sessions so we can have as many people as possible. This session is being recorded and will be placed on the PAL YouTube channel for future viewing. We would encourage people that have not attended today or even attended to go to the PAL YouTube channel to look at our recordings. And if you like what you see, click like and share and provide any comments that you'd like. And just to give you an overview of what we're doing here at PAL. We have a pretty small group today, so we would like, rather than Peggy doing all the talking, we would really like this to be very interactive, because it's a subject, long-term care is a subject that has been and possibly will affect a lot of people as they go forward in life, as well as I'm sure, everybody knows somebody that eventually moves to a long-term care facility. So it's important that that everybody be, aware, apprised of what the issues are in long-term care and how you can make a difference in ensuring that your loved ones and friends receive the best possible care at the right time. A little bit about Peggy. I should mention Peggy was actually a neighbor of mine and my sisters and my brother in the early to mid 50s, 1950s, when many of you weren't even born. So so it's quite interesting to have her back. I remember her as very, very small, and I was even smaller. So it's going back a long time ago to Second Avenue, but it was a lovely time in our lives. So it's great to see you again, Peggy. Peggy is a consultant and writer on aging and an activist for the rights of older people. She co-chairs the Housing Committee of the Council on Aging, Ottawa, here in Ottawa, which informs and advocates for age-friendly living for older persons in the full continuum from independent living in the community to long-term care. And Peggy writes two popular columns on aging and grandparenting in 55 Plus magazine. We'd like to thank the Ottawa Community Foundation for the support of this event and other events that will be coming up. So without any further delay, I'll turn it over to Peggy. And again, I think you can probably, unless Peggy says otherwise, you can probably have your mute buttons or your mics on if you want to raise any questions, because it is a small group. And feel free to, you can either wait until the end of the presentation, or you can ask a question or raise your hand during or at the end. Anyway, so without any further delay, here's Peggy.
Yes, and I've got a few questions to ask you so that, and like, like David says, it is a small group. So let's try and be interactive here. I want to thank you. I want to thank Pal and for inviting me, and all of you for coming. Friday afternoon, beautiful weather. So it's great that you'll be here, that you're here. And as David has said, long-term care concerns us all, whether it's our parents, our siblings, our friends, ourselves, and the next generations. The reality is we're living longer. In fact, the 85 plus age group is the fastest growing segment of Canadian society. And you ready for this one? Statistics Canada predicts that among young people born in the year 2000, 50% will live to 100. So all of you have a very good chance of living to 85 and maybe to 100. That's really significant for long-term care because people over 80%, people over 80 make up the majority of residents in long-term care. They have high medical needs. Many have dementia or other serious diseases. They need help with activities of daily living, such as bathing and dressing. But at the same time, residents in long-term care continue to make a valuable contribution to their families and their communities. They are our parents and our grandparents. We love them, and they deserve to be treated with dignity and compassion. We talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Well, here's the ugly. The fact that 70% of COVID-19 related deaths in Canada have been in nursing homes, amongst residents and a few staff in nursing homes. This not only attests to the vulnerability of residents and to their high healthcare needs, but most importantly, to the failure of the system to implement the needed changes we've long known about. Researchers, advocates, health professionals, and family members have been calling for these changes, which we'll discuss today, for over 10 years. Report after report's been written and has sat on the shelf. So today we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, what we've seen happen, and what we need going forward. And having said that, I'm not going to do a lecture. I would like to clarify just a couple of things about long-term care before we get into the conversation. First, the difference between retirement homes and long-term care homes. There's a lot of confusion about this. A retirement home is a privately paid residency for seniors who are independent and can direct their own care, but they may need some support with daily living, such as meal preparation, and they're looking to live with a community of like-minded others. According to legislation, retirement homes provide at least 2 of the 13 care services set out in the Act, only 2. And they could be things such as providing meals, assistance with bathing or cleaning, administering medicine, or making available the services of a doctor, nurse, or pharmacist. The fact that it's only 2 of a long list means that if you go into a retirement home, you're probably going to get your meals and you may get some basic cleaning in your room, and that's it. You pay for everything else on top of that. So if you need medication delivered to you, you pay for that. So the cost of living in a retirement home varies dramatically from about $2,000 a month to $6,000 per month, and even more, depending on the type of accommodation and the number of care services that you need. Most retirement homes are privately owned. Long-term care homes, on the other hand, are especially and only for providing care for adults whose needs can no longer be met in the community or a retirement home. So you must qualify for placement in a long-term care facility. You require access to 24-hour nursing and personal care. Long-term care homes are regulated by the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care, provincial ministries. However, what we've learned in the last 2 years is that the monitoring of these regulations has been very poor. In terms of how much it costs, the province pays for some aspects of, they pay for all aspects of nursing and basic care in long-term care, but residents must pay room and board. So this can cost per month anywhere from $1,800 a month. That's when you're sharing a room with maybe 4 others, to $2,500 a month for a semi-private room, to $2,800 for a private room or more. So secondly, what's the Ottawa scene like? Okay, the province, as you probably know, is divided into health regions. And there are 60 long-term care homes in the Champlain Health Region, which is our region. About half of those are in Ottawa. So about 30 long-term care homes in Ottawa and another 30 in the small communities outside of Ottawa. They're a mix of private, not-for-profit, and city residences. The majority are privately owned. The city owns, and City of Ottawa owns and operates 4 homes. And as I mentioned earlier, you must apply through Home and Community Care Support Services to go to a long-term care home. They manage the wait list. Now that's interesting. That's right on their website. Guess what? There's no wait list anymore. There used to be a 3-year waiting list for long-term care homes. Since the pandemic and the horrors that we've seen, nobody wants to go there anymore. And there are in fact empty beds. But they still have this process that you have to go through Home and Community Care Support Services. And there's some really good things about it. There's a nurse care coordinator there who will assess your needs and help you create a care plan and advise you on the kind of long-term care home you need to go to. The other upsetting thing about long-term care homes in Ottawa is that of the available beds, 31%, that's over 1,000 beds, do not meet ministry standards. I don't know all the details on what this is and why they don't comply with the ministry standards, but I do know that currently we have a crisis in air conditioning in long-term care homes. You know what we've been through in the last week or so with these very, very high heat. Well, the ministry says that these homes are air conditioned, but in fact, they're not air conditioned in residences' rooms. They're only air conditioned in the common living areas. And so we have all kinds of sick seniors now who, because of COVID, are in their rooms and they're getting heat stroke and their illnesses are exacerbated by the heat. So there's a lot of problems with even the beds that we have now. The third thing that I wanted to point out is, and David made mention of this, that the continuum of housing and living arrangements. Most older adults want to, what we call age in place. They want to stay in their community. And to do this, we need a continuum of innovative, affordable, age-friendly housing in the community. And I and others are very excited about the PAL venture and your building project, which is one example of an innovative, age-friendly building for housing. But we need these innovative, age-friendly housing to keep people in the community. And the other thing is that to stay in the community, home care is absolutely critical to aging in place. You know, the provision of services in your home to help you stay there. Home care is critical to aging in place. And if it's funded well enough and done right, it can keep people in the community and out of long-term care for a long time. That's not saying we don't need long-term care, we do. Once, you know, there will most probably come a time in an older person's life when the services, the health services they need cannot be provided in the community. So we still need long-term care. Unfortunately, home care services in Ontario are completely inadequate and poorly funded. And what really distresses me is that Ford is moving towards privatizing home care, just as he did with long-term care. And we've learned from long-term care that that isn't good for people. When institutions, residences are more about profit than caring, we end up with a problem. So changing home care and improving home care is critical to achieving change in long-term care. So in summary, you know, and I think Sharon said this, is that we want options to support seniors at home and in the community, but we can't continue to ignore long-term care. There'll always be some seniors. And as Sharon said, we need the right care at the right place and at the right time. So enough of me talking. I'd like to start the conversation with 2 questions for you. Now, not everyone has to answer these questions here. You may want to go away and ponder and think about it, and discuss them with family and friends. So my first question, are you prepared to go to live at a long-term care residence if you need to? You know, if you can't get the care you need from family and friends and community services, are you prepared to go? And secondly, what's your biggest concern about moving to a long-term care home or residence? Are you prepared to go? Yes or no? And if no, why not? And that leads us into that second question of what's your biggest concerns? So open it up. Anybody want to comment on those 2 questions?
Peggy, when you say, are you prepared, do you mean financially or emotionally and psychologically?
I mean all of those. And what do you think, Sandra? Sandra, are you prepared?
Well, I try to live a healthy lifestyle, but I know that anything could happen. And I don't, truthfully, because no one in my family ever went into a long-term care home, in my immediate family went into a long-term care home. I have this, maybe it's a delusion that I won't have to either, although my mother did receive a lot of home care, thanks to my brother and my father as well. Of course, my father had my mother. Anyway, am I prepared? I'm prepared, I guess, financially. If I had to, you know, I would just sell whatever I own, any property I own, and then I would be able to afford it. But what are my concerns? My main concern is just feeling depressed and lonely. I would hate it, or I would hate the idea. Although, you know, I mean, I do have an aunt that went into a it was a retirement. It was Hillel Lodge. She was in the retirement facility, but I can't imagine living in one room. You know, your life gets pared down to almost nothing, and that I think would be really hard for me, personally speaking. But you know, you don't know until you get there, because we're all like, on the inside, we're still that person we were. I mean, unless we lose our mental abilities, we're still that person that we were when we were 25, 30, or even, yeah, you know, we still have those same not desires, you know what I mean, same desire to live, to be active.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, it happens to everybody, doesn't it? We've just got to face it. Unless, what's the alternative? The alternative is an early death. And so,
yeah,
what does one prefer? To just go at age 80 quietly with no illness, or to just fade away and you know, become half or a shadow of yourself?
Yeah.
So that's the fear. That's my, more than a concern. It's a concern.
Fear.
It's a road. It's a bridge I don't want to cross.
And Sandy, everyone, I'm sure everyone on this call shares those concerns and fears. Thank you for your honesty and telling us about that. Anybody else? Yeah, Sharon, are you prepared to go, and what are your concerns?
Can't hear.
Oh, Sharon, just unmute
Yeah,
yourself.
I'm muting. Okay, I could
Oh.
write a book on this. I will.
Don't have time today.
I think I will. I'm not going to say the words today, of course, that the computer will write down. But everything from, see, I've experienced everything from my taking care of my own mother, in living in another country in the States, where, you know, she was probably going to go for 100, right? But my father went like that at 63 because of a blood clot. But he was actually, I think he died of a broken heart, because he was about to move from the home that he grew up, that the home that he built, the trees that he planted, because he had an arthritic issue, he couldn't take care of the property anymore. So that weekend he decided to move to a small condo with, like, he's like a mechanic, he's a woodworker, he's a gardener, he's an everything kind of guy. And with second wife, I hate to say evil stepmother, but with Alice, to live in a place without anything but just like the capacity to be fed or something, like, I'm sorry, like, it was all going to be gone. His garden, his woodworking, his mechanical, everything. And he had a blood clot, and I think he went, like, at 63, that's enough for me, because he did not want to go somewhere else. And that was even just moving into a small condo, right? But my own mother, she almost lived to 90, and just 2 years ago, we took care of her because she had a fall, and she had a fall, and we didn't know that her shoulder had gotten hurt. And she was a dancer and very active and always out and about. And at 88 and 89, she basically lost the capacity to use her arm. So when you lose, now I know I would rather lose a leg than an arm, because not having the use of the arm took away her life. And my angelic sister, older sister Caroline, took care of her within her home, because they had always set up the home like that. But she was bedridden within that last year, and I spent a couple months just helping her, and the family was all around her. So I could see, we went to visit places, we took her to some places, we took her to a hospital, but I'm here to be a sort of an activist for better opportunities for seniors to have places to live where they're medically taken care of, or just not medically taken care of, but have the capacity to live, but safely. And I swear, housing is my issue, but I'd say that the issues about aging and housing are my big issue, because this is on top of this right now with the Ontario government. They're the ones who didn't monitor the systems. They didn't take care of the problems. They just let it go. So now it's time to pay the piper, because I don't want people paying $10,000 a month for a care center when they could be eligible for a care center that just cooperatively takes care, like a co-op or co-living situation. Angels that visit you in your home. I'm in Old Ottawa South. I'm all about stay in your home, share your home, do whatever it takes to be in your life and be alive and take care of yourself and other people, because that's what keeps you going.
Right. You've just described beautifully. Thank you for that. You know, what we need to have going forward. And you know, and that's a sense of living in the community. It could still be in a long-term care home, but we can look at Denmark and other places. You know, Denmark 20 years ago, they abolished building these great big institutional long-term care homes. They said, we will not do that. And they put these small homes in the community. It would be right in your community in Old Ottawa South. They're very well staffed. They're very well supported by home care. Family and friends can be there, and yet they get the medical care that they need. So it is possible, but we have to totally transform what we typically have in Canada and in North America. Anybody else? Are you prepared to go? Yeah, great. CJ.
Hi, thank you for making this so interactive. I actually don't know how to answer, am I prepared to go? I really believe a woman, anybody should be able to control their own body. So whether you're 20 and of birthing age or older and just have served your, yeah, so I think MAID is very interesting. I'm really interested in what you're talking about and opening the dialogue. I think it's another one of those difficult discussions that, I mean, we live in an ageist society, but I mean, with racism and the gender problems and just the tragic things that have been happening, I think that to talk publicly about ageism, people will be going, oh, get over it. That's like a first world problem. But anyhow, I have been working with Dr. Carol Wiebe. I was the Carol Wiebe Artist in Residence since since 2018. And I have been making, I come from public art. You might know the Women's Monument or the Anti-Poverty Activist Monument in front of City Hall, or all those pieces on Preston Street or Blair Station. Anyway, so I come from a really placemaking background, and I think that recognizing people for what they are, knowing that they still have stories. And I don't, I remember the first time I went into the Gary J. Armstrong Center when I was competing to get I won the Public Art Commission for these crazy bronze birds on the balconies. And I had never really been around more than like 3 or 4 elderly people. And the public art program did this really wonderful thing. They had the finals for the big exterior project and the 4 interior projects inside the original Gary J. Armstrong building. So the community that came to vote on the pieces were all the people that lived there. People that were perhaps mentally debilitated, or some people that were sharp as anything, but their bodies were letting them down. And it was so interesting to see them interact and to have opinions or to react to the models. And ever since then, I've been really plus I had a friend who sat with a dying person, and her story, she's a choreography prof at Concordia. And so I've been really interested in that. And I don't see people that are older as not themselves anymore. They are at a stage of their lives, just like a 2-year-old is. I mean, we don't look at a baby. You know, if you go to a death cafe, somebody once said, there's so much to help people that are receiving babies, you know, how to exercise, how to not hurt yourself, how to carry the newborn, how to celebrate the newborn, and that we just don't talk about the other end of life. But it's interesting that midwifery used to look at people at both ends of their lives. So I just think that the transformation will come about. I'm sorry that I've gone on too long, but I just think that the transformation will come on about having more public conversations. And so Dr. Wiebe and I are starting this program called Radical Transformations. And we're taking the experience. She is a very skilled and educated chamber musician, and she co-founded Concert Docs. She started the Artist in Residence program at Briere. I had these experiences working at Briere where I worked with people who had limited or no mobility. And we made, 5-story installations to thank the nurses, or these very gigantic flowers, and then would have kind of a ritual with the flower tucked into the wheelchair going into the lobby to install it. And they're still there, the atrium art blooms. And I mean, you build community by doing creative things with people and by recognizing them for who they are in a most valid way in this state. And so part of our advocacy in radical connections, inspiring elders, is to bring more artists into working in long-term care places. And we're really looking at, for instance, there's a program now, inspired Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, inspired, I just read it yesterday, but I'm so excited about it. I'm not sure if I'm repeating it correctly, but they deliver art kits to people that have sort of piggybacked onto the Meals and Wheels thing. So once a month, an art kit goes to people in their homes. So Dr. Wiebe and I are looking at this, this possibility of working with people in their homes as well. And this, there's a silo around the health system. There's an ecosystem there. And then there's a silo around the art world, and there's an ecosystem there. So what we're trying to do is to kind of splice the roots of those two ecosystems. You could call it you could call it silo breaking, or you could call it, cross-sector new generation activity and respect. But that's the type of thing we're doing. And so I'm really happy to be able to participate in this conversation. And we'll be launching the project through an Arts Network Ottawa program
Okay,
in the end of August, and we can let you know.
fabulous.
Yeah.
Fabulous. And thank you, CJ. And I made 3 notes as you were talking so eloquently.
Oh.
First of all, you pinpointed an important thing here, ageism. I believe ageism is behind the neglect and
Yes.
the abuse that we've seen in long-term care. And you're absolutely right. It's another ism. And it's an ism that's going to affect all of us. And we need to talk more about it. The second thing you talked about, and I love these wonderful projects, is the use of creative art. And actually, this was going to be one of my closing points was, and what can we do moving forward? And you've already nailed it. Using the creative arts in 2 ways. Number one, in terms of advocacy, which you've been doing, and also in terms of bringing art to older people as an expression, listening to their stories, writing their stories, helping them through the creative arts, tell those stories. And there are some wonderful projects all over the world doing that, and in Canada as well. So congratulations on that. The third thing you mentioned is appreciating that a person may be very old, they may be sick, but they still can be engaged, and they have wisdom, they have a whole life of experience. And so when you involve them in artistic expression, that can come out. And like you said, you were, kind of blown away by the participation. So thanks for that.
We actually, Culture Days is a national event, used to happen live, but each province, they made it online last year. And so Briere was a hub, and there were 4 projects that we presented. It's called Be Moved at Briere or something, but we presented 4 projects, and then we won. That project won the Accessibility Award. So it was so neat and it was actually one of the volunteers' ideas. So we had come up with this idea because, the hallways are nasty. The hallways could be exhibit spaces, but they're just like these.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's
big institution. Yeah. Okay, great. But you see, we can create not only programs, but we can create buildings. We can create villages that model this. I was really fortunate. I got to visit Hogway in just outside of Amsterdam, which is a dementia village. Only the Dutch could pull this off. It is amazing. And I went with my neighbor's friend whose father was there, and he was a musician. And so this dementia village, everyone who lives there has dementia, and they're in pods, like around a kitchen and living room, and they each have their own bedroom and bathroom. And they actually even decorate their bedrooms as to the arts or the time of their lives that they remember the most. And this gentleman played the saxophone, and the 60s was his thing, and so his room was decorated that way. And they have a concert hall, they have a theater. And so young people will come in, bands and orchestras and everything will come in, and he gets to go and play with them.
Oh.
Dementia is accepted as just dementia as a way of living. There's a grocery store there. The residents can go and buy a bottle of wine if they want. So this is doable. We can do this kind of thing. And I really believe that art, that creative connection is really critical.
Just to, if I
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Sharon. Sharon, you go ahead.
No, okay. I'm just throwing out the at the Bronson Center, which I think you guys will know about, of course. So because just before just a year before COVID shut us down, the One World Arts organization I work with the One World Film Festival, I moved into that building because I said I wanted us to get integrated with the community, the senior and the youth and the minority community, because not to say, I used to be in arts court and be doing that decades ago with Saul and Saul Video and all that stuff. But I felt like the purpose was to align yourself in a place where people need you. And the idea that you guys have been discussing, this idea of the arts, aging and the arts. So they have now, maybe that Bronson got this big windfall of money for a 5-year plan. And so just before COVID shut us down, we had the whole idea of integrating the senior and the youth community on arts programming, which I came from originally a theater background, and I do the film issues now, but I'm sort of against film a little bit. I feel like I want live activity and interactivity and discussion and bringing people to issues and bringing people to action. And so I always say that be the change you want to see in the world, so that anything is better than the nothing. Like, it doesn't even matter what that tiny little action could be. So the idea we were going to do, reaching out to the stories, isolated seniors. COVID has kept everybody away from each other for protection, but the idea of the youth interviewing the seniors who have been isolated to bring their stories back, and then develop a program of that. We're doing like a mural project, but it's meant to be very informal, but it is about what you guys said, is that the community does it, not like one person comes in and gets an accolade for doing a design, but what does the community want? How to serve the community. I'm a Quaker, so I'm all about like, how do you serve the community and find a way to not think about what should be, but feel it, so that you can bring what is needed to the community, because you are serving that community, and it's always changing. It's always changing. So if we can be edgy and sort of off keel and think outside the box, like you artists are anyway, I just think it just takes a few people to push in that direction. So they want me to put some proposals forward, but now that we're able to connect with people in a better way, anybody that wants to work with me or with One World Arts or with whoever, I just want to be a bridge and help people connect. Okay. And
Wonderful, Sharon. Yeah, wonderful.
And so Bronson Center, how many people know about Bronson Center?
Yeah, but let's bring it back to long-term care if we can.
Okay.
Jenny's new. Are you there? Do you want to say anything? Okay. How about you, David, before we move on quickly? Are you prepared to go? What are your major concerns?
No, I'm not prepared to go to a long-term care facility. Just full disclosure, I work for the Ministry of Health. Actually, it was called the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care when I worked there. I worked there for almost 20 years in Toronto. My sister, Sandra, who's on screen as well, knows all about that. But I know all about the long-term care system and how it's been neglected under various governments, not just the Conservatives, the Liberals, the NDP, everybody shares the blame. So the lack of enforcement of standards, the lack of compliance, the poor training of staff, the horrible staff to client ratio, which is ridiculous. The lack of air conditioning that you mentioned, Peggy. I mean, these are things we would not tolerate this if we were talking about children. Yeah. We would not tolerate it. But somehow with the elderly, and when I say elderly, I don't mean necessarily 90 and over. I mean, the bar is being lowered into, the 60s or so. And we wouldn't tolerate it. And as you indicated, Peggy, before, I think this is all based on, and CJ, you mentioned this as well, it's all predicated on our lack of value towards the elderly and ageism. It's sort of the last ism that nobody seems to want to talk about. And I have my own thoughts on that, but one of the reasons is I think it's because, and I'm not excusing it obviously, but I think it's because none of us want to sort of think about or talk about what it's like to be old. It's like, we're putting it, in the background. And that trickles down to our policy makers and our politicians. And it's like any other issue. If the citizens don't make it an issue, it never becomes an issue. So no, I'm not ready to go to a long-term care facility. I would rather, God forbid, if I get to a really infirm state, try to live in the house that I live in as long as I can with home care. I mean, I think the maximum of home care is only about 22 hours a week. That's what it was when my mother was alive, which is nothing if you have, let's say, Alzheimer's or a stroke or any form of dementia. So yeah, I mean, I would hopefully bring in more home care. And my concerns about home care are all, as I've already laid them out, and they're written in, the latest report of the Long-Term Care Commission and the provincial auditor's report for Ontario. So it's all there. We know what the problems are, and we need to, make things happen, and look at other countries, such as you mentioned, Peggy, like Denmark and the Netherlands, and basically Europe, Western Europe, where I think the value of the elderly population is much greater than it is in North America.
Thank you, David. That is perfect segue into my last question, which I think we can have a good conversation about, is you mentioned the commission on long-term care, the Ontario Commission and the Auditor General's report. They are fantastic reports. There's how many? 85 recommendations. And we're not going to go through them all. But I think that we know what are the critical clusters or areas that need to be acted on. And I'd like to talk a bit about that. So what do you think needs to be done to fix long-term care? Because yes, much as we all want to stay in our homes, as David said, as long as possible, there may come a point, if you've had a stroke and you've lost your mobility and family members can't look after you, you really need medical care. So you want to go into a home-like environment where you're respected and taken care of as you need it, but also your independence and your wisdom and whatever is appreciated, and your family members who are the informal caregivers. This report is revealing to us how much of that care is done by family members who aren't paid, and during the pandemic have been banned from seeing their older relatives. I have a very dear friend whose mom died of COVID in a long-term care residence 3 weeks ago. And she's inconsolable because she was unable to visit her. She was unable to hold her and be with her in her dying days. So COVID has just exacerbated all of the issues and concerns that we've seen so far. Earlier, I think there is an opportunity here. COVID has created some good things, and there's an opportunity here to fix things, but we need to fix them. So what do you think needs to be done to fix long-term care? Anybody?
I think the warehousing needs to just stop, and it needs to break down to multiple units in the, why aren't long-term care houses connected to daycare centers, and across the street from high schools, and
right, which is what they do in Japan.
Well, there was an incredible one up in Low that just closed because they couldn't get any support. It was this beautiful house right across from St. Mike's High School. on us, it's low is only like, it's a very teeny village, like 20 minutes north of Wakefield. But they've closed, and it was run really well. And there were only 12 people who could live there. And most of them were local, the odd person up from Gatineau. And they could not get any support and then from the government, or had very, very low support from the government. And then the last premier made it even lower. And I only just found this out about an hour ago. And I was there and I thought, I feel like I'm in a Hojeway. Is that how you say it? I felt like they were having a yard sale, selling all kinds of accoutrement and tools. And I kept looking at this, and I'm saying, was there a daycare? And they said, no, it was a senior's home. And yeah, only 12 people, and there were gardens and a beautiful driveway, and you could see that how big windows and decks and ramps going up, and yeah, now everybody's had to, so I felt like I was just in a place that was the perfect situation, yet, well, I mean, that's in Quebec, but nevertheless, yeah, just like cut and divide.
Yeah. So we need warm, caring environments in small homes in the community that are well run with full-time, well-trained staff, right? That's the other thing that happens in Denmark and other countries, is that employees, the workers, they're well-trained, they're unionized, they have good conditions of work, and they're paid a decent wage. And Ontario's way behind on that. Well, BC, 6 months before Ontario, said, we can't have workers moving from one home to another because they're picking up the virus and spreading it. But in fact, the workers didn't have a choice because they're all on contract, they're making minimum wage or less to earn a living. They had to they had to go from home to home. That would not be allowed. That should not be allowed. And there have to be clear improvements to the labor force. And one thing, Quebec is ahead on this one. I mean, Quebec was, as we saw from the military reports, as bad as Ontario in some terrible abusive situations. However, they, about 6 months ago, instituted a program to train personal support workers. They pay them while they're in training, and they guarantee them a reasonable wage job in one facility when they graduate. And, that's one clear solution that we should have in Ontario. Yeah, Sharon? Oh.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay,
Yeah.
you disappeared for a moment. To create a model or pilot with the 12 people, as Fleur mentioned in the Quebec model, if that's possible to call it that, but that I had in university, it was called Horizon House, and we basically worked on a 12-person model for people to take people out of institutions. So in the early days of, you remember the 70s, and they dumped everybody out of the institutions. And then in the 80s, it's sort of like, where do they go? And so the idea, this was people halfway house idea, but this idea for seniors to be able to live like 10 or 12 people in a home together. And actually, we talked earlier about the housing crisis just a few days ago on the other panel, and how much it was $701 for the subsidy if you could keep a person in their home, and it was like $2,000 to have a shelter bed. Like the huge disparity between what it costs to go from scratch and to develop a whole place. Well, to me, use what you got. Like, and people have these big houses, and they don't have 12 bedrooms, but we used to share like 2 people in a room, and that's not great for everybody. But if you had a model where you basically designed a humane model that allowed for a certain number of people between 6, 8, or 10 to be in one facility, that recreates a home. Like, it's not meant to be a place to die. It's meant to be a place to live. So the idea of having a choice, and when for taking somebody to a home and sort of like saying, this is the last place you're ever going to live before you die, and it's against their will almost is a punishment. So you're right, reward the elders. We need to acknowledge our elders. We need to be, I don't like this retiring people at 65 idea anyway. I just asked the other day, people should be able to do half-time work. They should be able to mentor. They should be able to dovetail into productive lives in 60s, 70s, and 80s, and not be sent off on an ice floe into the wilderness because you're a senior. It's a waste
Right.
of human energy.
Yeah.
So I think the hub at the Bronson is also working on a building issue, which is to develop opportunities for senior artists to be able to live in a facility there.
Yeah.
It's kind of a bigger plan, but take what you got. Use a extra, I don't know what to say. I talked about the co-op and the co-op housing issue. If seniors could sign up for a co-op for the future, like in 5 or 10 years, I would like to be part of a senior co-op where we could live together. And it could be something that doesn't happen right now, but it could happen in 10 years. And then you said, are you ready now to do that? I'm not ready to go to the senior home where it is now, but I'm ready to sign up for a program that we can develop together that gives us some choices.
Yep, excellent. Anybody else? What do we need to fix? What are the critical areas?
I think intergenerational understanding.
Ah,
Is there
good.
a new thing like intergenerational day in June something?
Yes. Yeah.
I just,
Yeah.
it's such a division, you know?
Yeah, I don't know if you heard about the OK Boomer thing, and there was some absolutely dreadful hashtags that went around during the pandemic, kill grannies, it was just unbelievable. And there's been a lot of discussion about that, and has that made the rift in generations worse? And certainly on social media it has, and there's been some studies showing that. However, in my work, when I talk intergenerationally, and by the way, I have 11 grandchildren and 6 great-grandchildren, so I do a lot of personal intergenerational work. And the majority of young people they certainly love their grandparents and their aunts and uncles and older people. And there's a lot of room for learning between the two. And some of the projects you mentioned, CJ and Sharon, can facilitate that. But I'm really glad that you brought that up, because where I sit in the housing in age-friendly Ottawa, I would love to see more intergenerational housing. One of them Sharon mentioned, where seniors who have big homes can invite students to live with them and fill some of those bedrooms. But that whole intergenerational piece is really critical. And I do have one really lovely personal story. One of my 11 grandchildren, Andrew, and he and Tamala had planned to have a great big wedding in the fall. And of course, it was canceled because of COVID. And Tamala's grandmother was living in a long-term care home and where they had COVID. And they were afraid that she wouldn't make it to the fall. So you know what they did? They went and got married outside of her residence. And they got a justice of the peace, and they brought her out in a wheelchair, social distance, wearing a mask and whatever. And they got married there.
That's really
Now, isn't that sweet?
Yeah.
I mean, I just think that shows you that young people are appreciative and love their elders. Okay, that was a bit of a tangent.
No,
But really,
I agree. I think maybe those are stories that need to get out, that it's cool too. It's
yeah,
cool too.
it is cool.
Look how cool that was.
She didn't have the long white dress. Somebody gave her some hand-picked flowers. They didn't have the big wedding, but that was the most important thing. Yeah.
It's funny, kids don't want to live with their parents, but they probably live with their grandparents. And Like, it's ironic because they make jokes about it all the time. Like, who even talks to their mom? Like, you have like, what, you're actually talking to your mother on Facebook, and it's crazy. But the grandparents is like this whole other dimension. And I just love, yeah, the idea of Fleury said, the mixing it up. Like, just, it doesn't matter what age you are. If we were just talking and there was no picture and you had no idea who you're talking to, we could have the most amazing conversations. Just
Oh,
we're
there you go, David. There's a subject for another session.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else that anybody wants to suggest? We're going to close in, maybe 10 minutes, David.
How do you do follow-up on these things? Because we all seem to come up with, as with all things, the money goes into development research and sort of the little brainstorming and making a plan. And then there's no, like, what happens to take it to the next level? Like, how do you take something, like even one idea, to the next level with cooperation in your community?
Yeah, that's a big question. David might have some ideas on that.
Oh, David, tell him to go. No, he's gonna.
Are you muted, David?
He's muted. No. He's muted. Yep.
You're muted.
We missed his wisdom. Okay, Sandy, tell us what he said. You know your brother. You know him.
I was muted too. I don't know if he was.
Sorry, they're doing renovations in the basement and they're banging, and I don't know what they're doing. I thought they were finished, so I muted. That's the reason. I think people, like, if you want to make something happen, you got to make you have to take concrete action. And like, waiting for a politician. I'm specifically talking about whether it's the Truth and Reconciliation report, or whether it's long-term care, or whether it's, as Sharon suggested, alternative forms of housing like co-ops or whatever. You got to make it happen. And you've got to really bug the politicians, because there's too many politicians that are running, like, they basically get reelected just because they've been there for many years. And I'm sorry, you've got to prove in every election that you're worth, that you're listening to what people need, and you've got to earn it. You've got to earn it every day. And even after you're elected, you can't be on cruise control. So, there has to be a lot of citizen action. I'm talking specifically about cleaning up the long-term care facilities that exist now. All those 80 recommendations from the various reports have to be implemented. I mean, we've known what's wrong with long-term care for decades. No more studies are required. Let's just, implement it. As far as other things are concerned, like increasing the number of hours of home care, coming out with new and innovative models of long-term care facilities, like those 12-bed facilities that I think Sharon was talking about. I mean, those are really neat models, coming in with innovative dance programs. I saw something on, I think it was CBC, about dance programs that they're having for people with Parkinson's, and it really,
yeah, I sat in on one of those. It's wonderful.
Yeah. So, we can't see the bottle, there's a rush to judgment. I saw it in the case of my own parents. There's a rush to judgment that, particularly with physicians, nurses, not so much with physicians, they'll say something like, oh, your time is up, this is it, you're not going to get any better. And in reality, if the family pushes, you can see not dramatic improvements, but you can sort of, delay or even turn around that spiral down progression. And we have to see the bottle as, is it half empty or half full? I always get it confused, but you know what I mean. and really value, have full, and really, value older people, and we're all going to be there, and we have to push our politicians, hug them, call them up, lots of emails, texts,
Yeah.
go down to their
David-
office, hold a
David,
demonstration.
once again, perfect segue to our last thing, David, again.
Sure. Sorry.
Honest, we didn't script this. We did talk, but just, yeah. I guess we all think the same way. So the last thing I want to discuss is what can you do? What can we do? And I've made a couple of points here. One is read this book. Okay, this is Andre Picard's book. See, it's small. It's called Neglected No More: The Urgent Need to Improve the Lives of Canada's Elders. And, as you know, Andre Picard is a journalist from the Globe and Mail and an excellent writer. I'm on a mission to say that everybody over age 40 should read this book.
What about this one?
Yes, that's excellent as well.
Yes.
Excellent as well. But this one is very specifically about the Canadian scene and long-term care. And he goes right back to the history, how it started, and he's totally nailed it. So yeah, read this and tell everybody, to read it. Secondly, we've talked about this. Use creative means to tell these stories, the kinds of things we've talked about today, and to give voice to older people. And then thirdly, as David has said, let's do some advocacy here. One of the ways people always forget that sometimes advocacy is just talking to your friends, talking to your neighbors, making them aware of the situation, making them, pissed off, making them, ready to call their MP, ready to do something about this. And most importantly, as David has said, talk to your MPP, talk to these elected politicians, particularly the MPP, because it is a provincial jurisdiction. But, you might consider also talking to your city councillor. The city of Ottawa does own 4 long-term care centers, and they do have influence. And we didn't talk about this today, but then there's the federal component. Many advocacy organizations are saying we have to, got to reopen the Canada Health Act here. It's not enough to just have universal health care in hospitals. We need it in long-term care as well. Secondly, that the federal government, they fund, they provide money to the provinces for long-term care. So the idea is we need national standards, and the funding is tied to that. So Ontario, or Quebec, or Alberta, if you don't live up to those standards, you don't get the money. So, I think we can appeal at all levels of government, but most importantly at the provincial level, because that is where long-term care rests and responsibility for long-term care rests. I work with the Council on Aging, and they have prepared like a template letter that you can use. And you'll make it your own, put your own things in it, but it'll give you the basics as to what we are asking of the provincial government. And I think, David, you're going to be able to get that to people where that link is.
Yes, if you could send it to me, Peggy, and then I can post it on our PAL YouTube channel.
Okay.
Sorry, our PAL website, and this recording will be on the PAL YouTube.
Okay.
There will be a separate resource, a link to all resources for everything. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I actually did already send it to you, the link.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. If you could post that, and because I write a lot of letters, and I find it's easier to start with the template. Okay. I always make it my own, but you get it's just easier than looking at a blank page and thinking, what the heck am I going to say?
Absolutely.
And telephone calls. I mean, telephone calls to MPPs are very effective. Particularly if you're in their constituency, they have to listen to you. Yeah, Sharon.
Also, I'd just like to say that there are some things called the NORCs, naturally occurring retirement communities. So maybe to reach out to those and try to, wherever they are. I'm living in a condominium right now, and a lot of the people in this condo are over the age of 75, a lot, and they don't actually have to go anywhere else from here. They've lived here for a long time, ever since it was built in the 70s. I'm hoping to stay here for a long time unless something changes in my life. And so they have a book club here. They have all kinds of recreational activities that haven't been going on because of COVID. But, to learn from these naturally occurring retirement communities and try to create more of them. Because,
Right.
for me, just some of these ideas of living in a home where, there are 12 people and then common living spaces, it sounds great. But then, of course, there could be problems with conflict between some of the people. The fewer people you get, you don't know who else is going to be in the home. And there's no actual escape from them. When you're having dinner, you could always change tables at a retirement home, but I don't know how easy that would be. It's just me. And there's also something I've heard of called senior ladies living together that is on Facebook.
Yeah.
I don't know how well that is doing. I do have a friend who's over 80, and she's all for, groups of women getting together and buying a big home in a wealthy area, because there are, when you think of it, this idea of having said what I said about the possibility of conflict, it is a nice idea if you can get a congenial group together.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
get along. And maybe, okay, is time up?
I don't know what that was.
One
think
more
so.
comment, Sandy.
And so that's all I have to say about that, because it's not really my purview right now, but it is something I'm really glad I've participated in this, because it's something that we all have to think about. And I'm going to send out the link to the recording to all of my friends, because this was really, really, really interesting. It was a great discussion, but I did want to say one other thing. I was a teacher for many years, and I don't know that there is enough education about ageism in the schools, in the public schools, about there's a lot about sexism, about sexuality, that kind of thing, but they're just moving into the area of overcoming homophobia now, and of course racism has always been on the table. Not always, but in the last, say, 3 decades, it's been something that's discussed in history and English classes. I was a high school teacher, but to be able to bring in more and more older people, and like this intergenerational idea, conversation ideas, it's brilliant, really, because yes, everybody has a grandma, but and most people do love their grandmas more. There's a comfort level there, because they don't discipline them. They just give them good food and gifts and a space to go to when things aren't so hot at home. So yeah, education in the schools, like part of the curriculum, and to make sure that it's instituted, I think would help.
Great. Thanks for those comments, Sandy. The NORC model is one that our housing committee promotes, and it started in Kingston. But you're absolutely right. We don't just have to go to government level. We can start right at home. You're living in a naturally occurring retirement community, so what can you do to create support for each other as you get older and delay going to long-term care? That's really important. The other one you mentioned, the senior ladies living together. I live alone, and I actually got on that. It was a Facebook page. And I had to quit because I was getting like 30 notes a day from people saying, I want to live with you in Peterborough, in like all over the place. But the concept,
The
and
con-
they actually call it the Golden Girls model. And you know, the Golden Girls is back on Netflix. No, it's Prime, on Prime. And I've been watching them. I mean, it is hilarious how they nailed it way back then in the 50s. But this concept of older women buying a house and living together. And apparently what happened in a community outside of Toronto is that this 3 women were trying to do this. And the city council banned it because neighbors said it was going to be an old folks home. And then, so they had a huge fight, and another city councillor came to their rescue, and he called it the Golden Girls legislation,
Yes.
and it passed.
Hmm.
You know, but it was, yeah, really interesting from a personal but a political point of view as well. Anyway, so any
I think,
last
But it's okay.
yeah, Sharon,
Okay, the master city plan is about to be
Yeah.
rubber stamped. I don't want to talk about that really, but I just want to say that the concept of this type of integrating this plan, instead of just letting the cards fall where they may, as the expression goes, the idea of actually designing places into that plan, like to just say intergenerational living, like Fleury said, the idea, I take my hat off. Sandy, thank you for send out this recording to everybody so people can start talking about it, because they're about to rubber stamp a very long-term plan, like decades. Like it's not even, I wish it was a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan, but it's like a 20-year plan. So if I want to make this opportunity for all of us, like I might put a tiny house in my side yard, just as an example. They do not want tiny houses in Ottawa. Well, I'd like to have a little tiny house senior community or intergenerational community, because that's what my friends can afford. They can afford a tiny house, and there's no place to put it in Ottawa. So why can't we just have like a parking lot somewhere? So like, and as an experiment, they said, apply for a model with the city. It's like you somehow apply for like, you know, the terminology, the zoning, it's all about the zoning. So the idea of get away from the zoning rules somehow and do like I'm going to say the word experiment, but there seems to be a way to do that. You're allowed to do something, to try something.
Yeah.
Rather than just I keep getting, people get shut down because you're not allowed to do this or that. Well, as David said, let's just move it forward and try something, try anything, and then show them that, hey, people like this. And
you know, and you've just pointed out the importance of advocacy at the city level, not only in terms of long-term care homes, but in terms of urban planning and that long-term plan. And that what you've just enunciated is exactly what the Housing Committee for the Council on Aging wants to see happen. Do you want to join our committee?
yes, that's okay. And then less is more. No, less is more, because I believe in Sandy's model, like 3 people. I don't care if 3 or 10 or whatever the number is allowable. But how come the developers aren't interested in building a Golden Girls housing for like 3 women? 3 women who want to live together. Why should they have to live in any old house? Why can't you design the house for 3 women to live together that don't want to share dinner every night, that don't want to be, when you're pissed off, they don't want to see your face. So there's, I think anything is possible in architecture. It is all about architecture too, because we keep getting put into these boxes, these warehouses.
So you go to the head of the architecture department at Carleton and you say, we would like you to give this as a project to your 1st and your 3rd year students, and then have in the art world quite often, or the architecture or design world, they have these things called idea exhibitions or idea competitions. And so there are galleries at the City of Ottawa, Shankman, there are Nepean, I don't know all the areas, but I mean, there are many galleries that are there, plus the gallery. So you have to, there are many players that have to start knowing about it so that it's a cool thing to attend. But ideas competitions, right? You just like blue sky these ideas, like there's a perfect question for an architecture student, right? Why is a house for 3 women going to be different than a house for a father, a lesbian couple and their child, which could be 3 females, or to fluid gender people and their cousin who's moved from Iran. I mean, there are, you know,
That's
why
right,
is that
sister wives. Sister wives is the big thing now. I don't know if I can accept that, but the whole, it's think outside the box, because people are living in these like everything, like intergenerational. And I love the mix it up kind of thing, because I think, again, if we talked and nobody knew each other's ages or sex or anything, we'd have this interesting conversation, which isn't prejudice based on ageism. And now it's actually COVID has created this. I think we're the masks in a way. I find I was down at the vigil and I talked with people 2 hours after the vigil, because everybody was talking to each other. It didn't matter who you were. We were talking intergenerationally about something very important in Canada, and these people didn't even know each other. So this is the whole idea of housing. Like Sandy said, it's better to live with people that you are able to have as friends, because I know what it's like to live with people in Philadelphia, in a place where somebody will hold a weapon to you when they don't feel good in the middle of the night, okay? Because that's the whole issue, is you have to basically figure out the model. And maybe we should have made several models and at least try to get Carlton, as you said, to make 1, 2, or come up with creative models that young and old people can live with.
Yeah.
I'm just
okay.
sorry, I'm just gonna interject. I think just to close off, I think we need some of that Philadelphia spirit that Sharon has. You know, fly, eagle, fly. Anyways, we're going to be cut off in about 4 minutes from Zoom. So rather than it happening, I want to close off and it's Friday afternoon. I want to let Peggy go. I'm sure she has things to go. But I'd really like to thank you, Peggy, for a really invigorating discussion. We really covered a lot of bases today.
Sure did.
You know, we're left, we know what the problems are in long-term care. We know, you know, how to maybe slow down the progression to long-term care through, you know, seniors living together, small groups, you know, whatever, supporting each other. And then moving to, you know, all the advocacy work that needs to be done to really make things happen, whether it's, you know, cleaning up the existing long-term care facilities or, you know, coming out with pilot projects in conjunction with universities or whatever think tanks to kind of change the paradigm from all this, you know, warehousing that is going on. So listen, I want to thank you very much, Peggy, for coming by today. It was great seeing you, and for you, the audience, for showing up. We will be having, as I said, there will be more presentations for spring into summer series. Our next one, I believe, is on next Wednesday. It'll be Lisa Kresge, who is a ceramic artist. So I'll encourage you to attend that, as well as, you know, spread the word to your friends and family, and you know, enjoy the ride, enjoy the other presentations that are coming forward this month, and stay connected with Palo Alto. There's a lot of good stuff that'll be happening. So thank you again. Have a lovely day. Thank you, Peggy. And
thank you.
well.
I love the conversation. Thank you all.
Great.
Really good.
It was great.
Bye.
So, see you, Peggy. I'll be in touch.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Ciao, everybody. I'll
Bye, Sonia.
write you, Peggy.
Wait, because we can leave. There we go.